Welcome to the LeadHer Shift podcast. This is what I like to call a safe space. A space for bold women building their power, presence, and purpose from the inside out. A space where we explore what it means to lead with clarity, courage, and conviction. So wherever you are in the world, hey, I'm your host, Aliane Oliver, and I am super honored that you're tuning in today. So now today, I want to let you guys know who I have on the call. I have Ciara Lewis, an accomplished entrepreneur and the visionary CEO and founder of Fierce and Fearless. Let's just repeat that. Fierce and Fearless proudly unveils the arrival of the Fierce and Fearless Entrepreneur magazine. I can't wait to dig deeper into what this magazine is all about. Slated to release in July 2025, so just around the corner, guys. This transformative publication is set to inspire, inform, and empower women at every stage of their professional journey. I can't wait to sign up. Available on all major platforms, this magazine represents a pivotal advancement in the women's empowerment sector. Welcome, Ciara. Thank you so much for being a guest on our podcast. I want to learn so much more about you, the woman. So if we could take just a moment, why Fierce and Fearless? What brought us here?
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
So growing up, I was always one of the quiet ones, even in school. But
Mm,
I managed to be friends with pretty much everybody. I didn't really meet a stranger.
right.
And I started working young. So my first job was a clown. And I think just from starting there and growing into other careers is how I really started to see how women were perceived in society. Um,
Mm,
After that, I started venturing off into jobs that were managed by men.
mhm.
And that was really what said, that gave me, the big awe moment.
Yeah.
And I said, this can't be, this cannot be how we're treated in society or how we're viewed. The first time I noticed it and had an issue was when I worked at a car lot.
Hmm.
I'm not sure what that man had against me, but I was the sole female sales associate there. And I think the issue was they thought that they could get part of my sales because they thought I didn't know what I was doing or I wasn't
Mm,
good enough to do it on my own. Unfortunately, that was not the case. Because I'm definitely one of those like, try me if you want to. And when you tell me I can't do something, I'm definitely going to make sure I find a way to do it.
mm,
So I ended up being the only person that could actually get the trucks off the lot. That literally drove them in insane. Had a couple of headbutts with the owner, which is eventually why I ended up leaving. Funny because he actually tried to ask me to come back several years ago
mm.
when he came back, but I was just like, no, I'll never do that again. However, I went on to be selected to this program, 1,000,001 Black Women with Goldman and
Mm.
Sachs. And
Nice.
that right there just let me know how powerful we are as women and how we've got to come together and stop this feud, this contest.
Mm,
It's not necessary. And we can do so much more when we work together rather than when we work against each other. And that is the reason I said fierce and fearless. On top of, I know that there's several women out here who have been through probably a whole lot that they're not willing to mention.
yeah.
I am a domestic abuse survivor,
Mm,
and I shouldn't say survivor as if like he tried to kill me, but I went through a domestic situation,
yeah.
and I feel like a lot of times women they don't want to speak on that or they let that take away from them when that's really what empowers you. You just got to find the strength within you and the ability to keep moving and knowing that you're not alone, because I think that's what we feel like when that happens is we're alone and we're ashamed. And that does not have to be the case. Um, so that's another reason why I chose Fierce and Fearless, because, you know, I mean, we're women and I feel like we outdo anything that is given to us. We take a challenge regardless. And we're always ready. Even when we don't look ready, we're ready.
Listen, so you started off strong here because even when you were speaking about, okay, so we got to break this down. You got the male dominated spaces where there's this expectation that they're the ones who lead, they're the ones who are domineering, they're the ones who kind of dictate how we exist in the space. They may not listen, they are not attentive, they don't really care that we are existing there. And then you have the other side where it's women who may not champion and celebrate each other and recognize how powerful we really are and understand that we are not just fruitful, but we multiply. And we
Yes.
multiply constantly. Everything we are
Yes.
handed is duplicated and tripled, right? And
Yes.
so, how do you connect and exist with women, understanding their power while at the same time being in spaces where men don't want to even acknowledge our power? Like what's that dynamic? How do we force ourselves or be fierce through those situations?
You show up. You keep showing
Mm,
up. You never let whatever they are trying to create the environment to be like, you never let that take you down. You never let it show through. You show up just as fierce and as strong as you would, even if we're not at that job, or as if a woman or someone, nicer or at a higher standard was over the job. You go in and you do your job to the best of your ability, which as a woman or as a woman, normally we take that, like I said, to the next step.
yeah.
So you don't let it hinder you, because eventually what's going to happen is that's going to speak so loudly, which is actually what happened at the next job I took after that. Actually,
Mm,
it happened at both jobs, but the second job, the man literally stopped because he seen what was happening.
right.
It was so loud that he understood what was happening. And we ended up having a personal one-on-one conversation about it. And he told me, I hear you. I see you.
Mm,
And if you would not have been responding in the manner you were responding, I would not have noticed that there was a problem.
mm,
So you do not let them win. You keep going. You do what you're supposed to do. And eventually, when they realize that you're unbothered by what it is they're trying to create or that mood they're trying to set, there one or two things are going to happen. They're either going to make the change because they're going to realize there's a problem,
right.
or they're going to become so uncomfortable that it's going to come down to either somebody's going to stay or leave. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're either going to acknowledge how much I'm doing for you and this company, or I'm going to go elsewhere. And at this
Mm.
point, you need to decide to take your pick of my value.
I think this is so powerful because I do feel like as women, we tend to adjust to what's happening in the space as opposed to
Yep.
just being ourselves authentically. And we
Yes.
tend to almost go in the shadows a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And we are very much, let me mold myself here and don't show up where I'm like labeled the angry woman, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm a little too aggressive, or we just should show up. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you even do that when you don't believe in yourself? I feel like you're super impressive because you've been, or it feels like you've been in a lot of male dominated spaces, and I don't want the focus to be there, but I really want the focus to be like, is there ever a time where you didn't feel confident? Or because I know confidence takes time, and it also takes the courage to step out in the first place, right? But
It does. Yeah.
I'm sure there were moments where you were like, um, should I even be courageous in this moment? Like, should I step out? What was that shift for you? Like, what was there a defining moment that you felt like, you know what, enough is enough?
Yes, the car lot.
Mm,
The car lot was my first major sales job.
right,
And I will say it was challenging when I realized that there was another female there, but she never really came to work. Um, she didn't really even have to truly work to get the sales. And I'm not saying that in a bad way, because what would happen is she was a beautiful woman. So
right.
of course, a lot of people were attracted to her. They wanted to go to her. So when she would come to work, there was no doubt she was going to sell something that day. But was she truly selling it because she knew what she was doing?
Mm,
No. And I'm not saying anything against her because again, she was a beautiful woman. She had a beautiful voice. Um, but see, the men knew that and they took advantage of that. And she was so blonde, she didn't realize it because she didn't realize her beauty was what was really keeping her pushing at that job.
right.
And they would talk about her in such a way when she wasn't around that it would just sicken me because I'm thinking, if she only knew this is what you all were doing when she wasn't here,
Mm,
I'm pretty sure it would change so much for her and how she came to work.
yeah,
And eventually she ended up quitting. And so again, that just left me. But um yeah, there were definitely times that, I came to work and I was like, I'm not sure if I should be doing this.
mm,
Um, especially because, like I said, they are so quick to pin us against one
each
another.
other. Yeah,
And she was a little bit older than me at the time, right? So obviously she's carrying and looking a little bit different than I'm looking when I first come on the scene because I was still young.
yeah,
Um, so at first I thought, okay, am I going to be able to actually sell? I let all these thoughts start going through my head until one day I told myself, and actually I'll tell you, I had a client come up and tell me that you don't have to look a certain way
right.
to do your job. He said, I can tell that you know what you're doing. You know about the cars.
Yeah.
You know your way around a car. And that is going to be what makes you the best salesperson here at this lot. And
Mm,
so from that day forward, that's what I had to tell myself. It's not about the look. It's about my character, my knowledge, and how I carry myself
yeah.
when I'm approaching and speaking with a client.
Mm,
And so once I knew that, you couldn't stop me. I knew exactly how to approach each sale. I knew how to close my sale. I had gotten so good that the financial manager was actually wanting to teach me how to literally do my sale from start all the way to finish, paperwork
mm,
and all.
nice.
Um, I just didn't want to take on all that responsibility because it was a lot, on the paperwork end.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely had that breaking moment. I definitely had that moment to where I felt discouraged. I felt like I wasn't worthy enough to be in that position. I felt like I couldn't do it. And then that changed for me.
Nice. And so I hear all of these stories and these conversations about, you know, who may have stepped in and shared thoughts with you. And from that alone, Ciara, I feel like I know the answer to this question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Do you feel like you are a leader?
I do.
I
Um,
why though? Like what brought you to that?
I feel like, and I think I get a lot of this from my grandma.
Mm,
My mom has the same tendency, but my grandma was really just one of these women that I don't care where we were,
mm,
everyone was attracted to her. Like just random people would come up to her and share their story or, cry or just, and I started having that problem. And at first I didn't realize, what was going on. But then it came to my attention that I must carry such an energy that
mm,
people feel safe coming to me
yeah.
and talking to me or sharing whatever or even taking advice from me.
Mm,
And this literally started happening to me in every job that I went to. Like I remember having that. This was my best moment in my whole entire career. The car lot again. I had this older couple. They were from Florida. They had phoned in an inquiry.
okay.
And a lot of times the phone inquiries, they don't always go through, right? Especially if they're coming out of state.
Right.
This man literally wanted to custom build his car. I was the first one that actually built a full car, top to bottom,
Oh,
for a client.
okay.
Now, everybody kept saying, "Oh, I bet he don't show up. I bet he don't." Blah blah blah. This man
Right.
showed up to the car lot with his wife, with cash,
Nice.
and not only did the man show up to get his car, it had been a minute since my aunt tried to teach me how to drive a stick when I was younger. That was kind of how I started learning to drive. Um, but that's not how I drove after the fact, if that makes sense. Like I was on an automatic. So it
Right.
had been a minute. I wasn't comfortable. This man literally trusted me enough that he wanted me to drive his car
Nice.
because he wanted me to not have, I guess he could feel that I was in that male dominant space. And he wanted me to feel confident enough to drive a stick if ever needed. And he
Right.
said, "This would be the best thing you take away today because I'm going to make sure that this is something you can do moving forward as a saleswoman at a car lot."
Nice.
And I got behind that seat and I actually was able to, I was relaxed because the man literally put that in me that I could do it. And I managed to do it.
That's
So,
actually pretty pretty powerful because especially when you have not been doing something for so long, it's just the
yes.
activity, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just only you believing in yourself in that moment, but someone else
Yes.
trusting. You see that level of trust that
Yes.
someone puts and you're like, well, if they trust me, well, I must trust me too, kind of thing. And
Yes.
I love that. And I love also that I don't know, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels like a restorative moment where, you're in this male dominated space, but then another male kind of presents this opportunity and you're like, oh, well, you're not all that bad, aren't you? Kind of thing. So I really hear that. But I also hear there's a lot of dynamic and powerful women that have been in your life. So I hear grandmother, I hear aunt, and I'm just curious, like, what are some of the good lessons that really came from the powerful women in your life about leadership? What are some things you could share?
I can definitely tell you my grandma always tried to tell me, pick your battles wisely. Because I can tell you
Mm,
growing up, I was a spitfire. It did not take much for me to get upset.
right,
And she told me that eventually I would learn it, and I have finally learned it. But she would always tell me that, getting upset was not always going to solve my problem, and that it was only going to take more time and energy away from me
right.
than what I was investing into the anger and the argument.
Mm,
And so it took me a while, like I said, it took me a long while to really understand what she was trying to tell me in that moment. Um, and of course, my mom, my favorite, um, she would always tell me, don't put all your eggs in one basket.
wow.
And, she's telling me that as a young woman. And at first, it was kind of hard to really pick up on, well, what do you mean exactly by don't put all your eggs in one basket?
Mm,
But of course, as I continue to grow and mature and, obviously go through more challenges in life, I understood exactly what she meant by do not put all your eggs in one basket.
mm.
Um, her and my grandma both also used to tell me, don't always let your left hand know what your right hand's doing, or your right hand know what your left hand's doing.
Listen, you
You
sound
know,
like my grandparents.
yes.
Oh,
And I
goodness.
think that that is probably one of the second most important things
Mm,
that I've learned. Um, because I feel like, especially in this space we're in today, especially with all the social media, I feel like everybody is so quick to like let everything out there, tell everything.
everything.
Like we don't need to know everything.
That's it. That's it.
Um, Now as far as my aunt, Um, my aunt, she was almost like a second mother to me. So she picked up where, my mom couldn't, because my mom worked two jobs.
Right.
Um, and my mom didn't like going to the fair or, things like that. So my aunt was always the one that would take me like to those type of places, Bible school,
Nice.
and like I said, my aunt was the one that really taught me driving and would take me out, let me practice, those type of things. And I'm not saying my mom didn't, because she did, but like I said, my aunt just filled in to the spots where my mom couldn't.
Yeah.
So I can say I definitely had a lot of support with the women in my family. Um, I had another aunt. She was married to my uncle.
Right.
And oh man, that woman, she was very wise.
Mm.
Um, and I can just remember, she would always try to have these really serious talks with me, but in such a way to where I wanted to listen to what she was saying. I
Right.
wanted to hear and understand the true discipline that she was trying to give me in that moment.
Mm.
And, her thing was, because I'm the oldest in my family.
Okay.
So her thing was trying to tell me, you've got to make sure you're looking out for your younger cousins.
Mm.
You got to make sure you're setting a high,
Standard.
standard for
Yeah.
them.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And so that's one of the main things that I took away from her, growing up, because that was a constant conversation we were having. And she was letting me know that someone is always watching me.
Mm. And the thing is, so amazing and powerful. The wisdom is unreal. I've heard almost all of that feedback and advice over the years. I'm just curious though, like, when you're the oldest,
Mhm.
because I'm a first daughter, right?
Okay.
When
Uh-huh.
you're at the top of the ladder, so to speak, looking down, but being told this is a heavy responsibility you need to bear. Is there anything you feel like you had to unlearn or strip back
I
because
feel like a
of
lot.
maybe too much pressure?
Hmm. Yeah, I definitely feel like a lot. Because I feel like you said, it's so much pressure
Yeah.
that it's almost like it steers you to do wrong. Does that mean? And I don't mean wrong as in like something oh so bad, but it's like you're so under so much pressure that you start to veer a little bit,
Yeah.
not realizing you're veering. And, until you realize that, hey, they are watching what I'm doing. They
Mm,
are mimicking what I'm doing, then it's like that, aha, okay, like I've got to be more careful with what I'm doing and how I'm
mm,
going about it and how I'm carrying myself. Um, so I do feel like, as being the oldest and at the top, you do have a lot to unlearn. You
yeah.
really do. I think you kind of got to go backwards and restart,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
in order to really try to get it right. And even then, you're still not going to get it right, because we're not perfect. We're
That's
still
it.
human.
That's it. I think one of the things that for me personally I had to unlearn was it's not my responsibility. It's not,
Yes.
their outcome, what goals or results they produce,
Mhm.
taking the pressure off of the
Mhm.
fact that I can also only be responsible for myself
Yes.
and only be responsible for what I have control over. I can't even control my own outcomes, right? And so I had to unlearn, like, okay, love my people, love them. But while I may be at the top and there is a responsibility because you always have influence, especially over those who are closest to
Yes.
us, right? We always have some form of influence. And I want my influence to be positive. But I
Mhm.
must also understand that even with the most positive, they may still make bad decisions. And I may still make mistakes as well along the way. So unlearning not not allowing that pressure to feel like I am responsible for their outcomes because I couldn't possibly, right?
Yes.
That in itself speaks to where do we go from here? How do we then decide to lead, knowing that those observing us, those maybe mimicking some of what we're doing, is not necessarily our responsibility. So I want to now talk about fierce and fearless. Tell me a little
Yeah.
bit about how are you taking that and ensuring that other women, are leading in their own right with their own authority, with their own voice, but unlearning some of the things that might be from their past.
So the first thing is, I think image,
Mm,
is very important. And this is something that I picked up on when I was in the program, at Goldman Sachs.
right.
And, before you would not have had me on this podcast
Well, I'm
because,
so glad you're here now. I mean,
because there was a point to where I was so uncomfortable with
mm,
my eye that
okay.
I didn't want to take pictures. I didn't want to be on the camera. There's also a point to where, and I still don't really like large crowds.
Okay.
Um, but Goldman and Sachs broke me. Especially
In a
because
good
it was
way,
a
I
once,
hope.
yes.
Yes. Okay, good.
Um, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I knew that if I didn't go, I was going to regret it. So I literally
Mm,
had to tell myself, Ciara, suck it up. Fake it till you make it if you have to, but you're going.
mm,
And it was all the way in New York. Um, First time I would have been doing anything by myself. No
mm,
sidekick, no mom, no, it was just me walking into
right.
this huge crowd of unknown women in an unknown situation, like 12 hours away from home, and had no clue what to expect. But
Mm,
I'd done it. And when I've done it, what I've learned is just be yourself.
mm,
Don't show up as something that you're not.
yeah.
Because what's going to happen, people are going to expect that every time you show up.
Yeah.
Um, I've never really truly been one to wear a lot of makeup, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with anybody wearing makeup. Trust me and believe that's not what I'm saying. Um, but here's what I've told myself. If you get to where you now start putting on all this makeup
Mm.
at certain occasions, that's how people's going to expect to see you
Expect.
every
That's
time they're
right.
seeing you,
That's
you
right.
know?
And that's not the
And
natural you, right?
yes, exactly. And I've just always been more of a natural person. And that's what I want people to expect or realize when they see me. I want them to understand, oh, she has flaws,
Yeah.
or oh, she has this, and this is what I can expect when I see her. And so somebody at that program told me, honey, they're not looking at your eye. They're
Yeah.
not buying
I
your
was gonna
product.
say honestly until you said it, I didn't fully realize. So you're beautiful. I mean, and
Thank you.
regardless, I think sometimes we focus because we know
We know
about
what
our personal flaws, so we focus so
yes.
much on it, not realizing that a lot of persons don't even recognize it sometimes, Yeah.
Yes. And it literally took for somebody to say that to me for me to
Mm,
really understand that and like get
yeah.
that in my head.
Yeah.
Um, and so, when they told me that's not why they're buying your product. It's because of who you
That's right.
are and how you carry yourself and your character, And so that's when I was like, aha, you're right. Because the clients I have now, they didn't choose me because of my eye. They
No,
chose me
absolutely
because
not.
of, yeah, because of how I do business.
That's it. And the
Um,
value that you bring, the
yes,
value supersedes looks, you know. We
yes,
get so focused.
absolutely.
I maybe it's social media. Maybe it's what is being presented to the world right now where especially as women, I feel like we are sold this image of what
You are.
professionalism is meant to look like and how we're meant to
Mhm.
show up in different spaces and different sectors and maybe that is clouding a little bit of our judgment.
Yes. And I'll tell you, I think what I really enjoyed about that program was now, obviously, we're at a very high end program, right? I mean,
Right.
like people are dressed to the nine. We are literally sitting in a room with millionaires.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so, I think the expectation was come dressed in your best, to head
Right.
to toe. That was not the expectation. I mean, obviously, yes, there were days that we should have been dressed very nice, okay, but we were tired. We were
Mm,
hot. So we finally realized that, hey, these people don't care if you're in heels and a dress 24/7 while you're here. So a lot of people started to relax. They would come in that relaxed casual dress
mm.
instead of, like literally being in heels and dresses and suits and whatever all day long. And to know that we were still seen the same way as we were when we first came onto the program, that said a lot to me. That meant
That's
a lot
that's
to
it.
me.
That's it because I really feel like, is one thing, and I've been saying this time and time again over the last maybe decade. There's one
Mhm,
thing to have a professional brand and, to present yourself in a way that really shows up.
mhm.
But to truly be seen is beyond any clothing, hairstyle, shoes you wear, bag you clutch. Is beyond that because when people see you, none of those things matter, right? And I like showing up in spaces that I feel safe. And safety
Yes.
isn't just about security and all these things. Safety is knowing that I don't have to be performative.
Mhm,
I don't have to perform for you to like me or to appreciate, respect, or honor what I have going on. And
mhm.
so, do you feel like, in general terms, women are women feel like they have to perform in these kind of spaces?
Yes. And I think that's a lot of the problem. Another reason why I say fierce and fearless,
Yeah.
and taking that next step, because yes, I feel like society has put us in a box
Yes.
and has trained us on
Yep.
how we're supposed to speak, feel, look, dress, or be,
Mm.
or act.
Yep.
No, we're human.
Yeah.
We should be able to speak and feel and act however best suits us
Yep.
and not suits the world. We're not here for the world. We're here for ourselves.
That's right.
And until we realize that, I don't think we're going to be able to accomplish what we are truly here to accomplish as a female, because we're being stricken by what society has confined us to. And
Mm.
that's not who we are.
Mm.
And when we are finally free and we finally start letting that inner self out and truly taking advantage of who we are, what we're meant to do, and how we show up, oh man, oh man, that's all I
Unstoppable.
gotta say. Yes,
Unstoppable. You know,
yes.
um, so tell me a little bit about Fierce and Fearless. It's a magazine. What are you hoping to achieve when you launch in July?
So there's several goals, but like I said, my main goal is I want to help other women to take that next step, step out of that box. Even if it may not be a giant step right off the bat, if it is something that you have been holding on to for a
Mm,
long time because you were scared to go, or you were scared to say it, or you were scared, that's what I want to help you accomplish. That's where I want you to go. I want you to know it's okay and that you're not alone and
mm,
that there are millions of other women out here just like you,
that's right.
and
And
millions of us who have already taken that step
yeah,
and are willing to hold your hand to help you take that step.
and I think
Yes, I,
is
I want to.
sorry to cut you, but I'm just seeing, like, I almost feel like I'm seeing a movement happening. I'm seeing
That's my goal.
women of all different walks of life. I'm seeing women of all different backgrounds, all different ages, all different ethnicities, just understanding themselves enough to believe. Because I think at the core of all of it is that I don't think, and I know maybe, and you could tell me what you think, but I think society as a generality, sometimes women, sometimes men, sometimes just how the structures are set up, almost try to place us in certain roles. We are supposed to be the mother and the wife and the partner and the ideal daughter and da, 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 and the list goes on. And no one really says we're to be powerful and dynamic and
They do.
fearless and just bold. Like we don't get that narrative. So is this something you see? And I mean, I know you see it quite often, but how do we then shift in this movement or help women to shift in this movement where they actually want to be bold and be fierce and be dynamic without having to hear it from society?
I think it's going to take a lot. I definitely think it's going to be a slow growing movement, but I think the more events,
Yeah.
more talks, the more podcasts, the more workshops and resources that we provide women and show them how to take that next step, show them it's okay to take that next step, show them how other women are taking that next step. I
Yeah.
really think is going to be what helps us and allows us to help other women get to that next step.
Yeah.
Um, it's funny because we just came from Miami last week.
Hmm.
And did I imagine this was going to happen when I was down there? No. But again,
Hmm.
this is the point of being fierce and fearless. This is the
Yeah.
beauty of it. Um, I had gotten selected to do a free photo shoot
Nice.
with Nuevo down there.
Nice.
And it was one of those boudoir photo shoots, I think is, what they call them. And I've never, not one time in my life, ever done anything like that.
I
Never
love
have I
that.
truly thought about doing anything like that.
Yeah.
And as I was speaking to the woman on the phone, because she was reading about my bio, and she's like, I see this magazine. I see, and she said, I really think this would be a good fit for you. And so I also knew, hey, this is a networking type opportunity as well, right? Like I
Yeah.
try not to go anywhere without doing some form of work or network.
Yeah.
Um, and so she's like, okay, we have this option. You can either do the black background with like red or blah blah blah, or you can do the white background and a color of your choice.
Hmm.
The old me would have went with the black background because that's my comfort zone. I feel
Right.
safe, I feel hidden, I feel secure in black, right? I said, you know what? Today we're going to go with the white background. And she
Hmm.
said, I was really hoping you would say that. She said, because that shows what you're trying to make with this magazine, the move you're trying to push with this magazine. Um, so when I get into the studio, they asked me how was I feeling. It was crazy because for the first time, I wasn't nervous. I
Hmm.
wasn't scared. They had set the environment to make you feel comfortable,
Right.
free, careless. And I will tell you, that was the best experience that I've probably ever had, especially if you're a woman that has any type of self doubt,
Right.
any type of low self esteem, or have been through any type of trauma. That is the best experience. I'm telling
Hmm.
you.
Hmm.
Um, those women were phenomenal. There was no judgment, and I was comfortable, which is weird, especially because you have no clothes on. And
Yeah.
I think as
Yeah.
a female, that is hard for us because, like I said, I feel like we have been painted this picture of
Yep.
again what we're supposed to look
The
like, or how.
ideals, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, or that we're supposed to be dressed. If anybody remembers, we didn't start out dressed. We didn't
That's
start
right.
out with clothes.
That's
The
right.
clothes were made to stricken us from who we are and our energy.
Hmm.
Um, and so that session was very powerful. And she made sure she done a couple of photo shoots for me to actually utilize for the movement of what I'm trying to do.
I love that.
Um, and so I can't wait for them to come back because they were very powerful images, really.
I love
Especially
that.
because I didn't think I looked like that. So, when I'm like, are you sure and she said, yes, honey, this hasn't even been edited. That's you.
Yeah. I love that. And I love the fearlessness in that, in just even doing that shoot, but also what I am hearing from you is that there's so much power in community, right? And
There is.
so much power in us supporting each other. And I think,
Yes.
the more we develop that sense of we're doing this together, there's enough for everybody to go around, there's
Yes.
enough value each of us brings to the table, there's enough for our voice to all be heard in sync and individually. And
Yes.
we need to just be in solidarity with each other and truly support. I don't think many people understand what the word support really means. What do you feel like that means?
I feel like support is showing up and just being there for somebody. Sometimes somebody just literally needs us to just show up.
Yeah.
Just be there. Sit in silence. You do not have to say a
Mm,
word. You do not have to move. You do not have to do anything. Just show up.
that's it.
I think support means, being willing to try and assist in any way you can within whatever the situation is. And whatever you can't do, try to find the next person that maybe might be able to do that.
Yeah.
Um, Support, I think, is no judgment. Why are we still
Right.
out here judging each other?
That's it.
Because at the end of the day, we have more than likely been in the same situation, a similar situation, a worse situation. Who are we to judge that next person sitting next to us?
That's
We
it.
don't know what that person's been through.
That's it.
We don't know what got them to finally come out of that shell and become who they are at that given moment. That person might be on the brink of literally getting ready to jump off a cliff. And if you
Mm,
just say that one word or you give them that one reaction, that may just push that person on over to the next. I work in behavioral health as well. I own a medical billing and credentialing business, and I can't tell you how many suicides and things like that we have seen since COVID. I mean, even prior to COVID, but since COVID, it's been
yeah.
awful
Yeah.
because,
Mm,
again, as society, we have had this judgment put on us. We've
mm,
had this perception that if we see a person dressed a certain way or talking a certain way or, acting, that they're crazy or they're
yeah.
this or they're that. That's not the case. And we've got
Mhm.
to stop doing that. And
Yeah.
we've got to start realizing that people need help.
Mm.
Everyone's mental status is not where it was years ago.
Mm. Listen, I say this to everyone who will listen, and I repeat it time and time again. All help is not helpful. And I feel like as a generality, we help how we think we would want to
Yep.
receive help and not how the other person or the other thing is going to need the help. And I feel like
Yes.
we don't do enough to figure that part out because
Oh,
we're almost trying to make ourselves feel better by helping, but our help may not be useful and is it pains me because I feel like we don't do enough for each other in a meaningful way. It's
yes.
crazy. I wanted to delve into a little bit into that because I know you have your company KL Consulting, right?
Uh-huh.
Tell me a little bit about that and how that came about. Why that sector? Where did that come from?
I've actually been in the medical field for 15 years.
Nice.
Maybe even a pinch longer at this point, but definitely 15 years. Of course, when I started out, I was starting out in small practices. I had a large practice I was in one time, and you see a lot. And I'm
Mm,
also the type of person where I have very good attention to detail, like
right.
very good. And I could see things coming from a mile away that most other people couldn't. I
Mm,
understood things to a level most other people didn't. But again, people always say the billing world is like a foreign language, and it is if you don't
mm,
understand it.
right.
A lot of people laughed at me because I'm a color coder. So, when I would do my
All
monthly
the sticky
reports,
notes
I
and
would go
the
through and yes, yes.
yeah.
I would color code. And I worked at this behavioral health place, and I had this manager, and she loved me but hated me at the same time because she
Mm,
knew at the end of the month I was going to be coming down that hallway with my color coded sheet, trying to tell her, "Hey, look, here's the problems. This is
These are some things we
to
should
this day we
address.
still laugh
They're
at it.
in
Yes.
pink. I love that though.
Oh, but yeah, she was fantastic. We still stay in touch to this day and we still get tickled at that. But um, seeing these things and seeing the things that the providers were missing and not understanding made me tell myself, Sierra, maybe if you try to go on your own, these
Mm.
people will be more susceptible to hearing you and actually
Mm.
doing what you're trying to tell them. Because I felt like working in the office, they were so concerned about being the boss or the provider or this and that
Mm.
that they weren't hearing what I'm trying to tell them.
Yeah.
And so they were only continuing to hurt themselves because they didn't want to take heed to what I'm explaining to them.
Mm.
So that's how I ventured out on my own. And let's just say it has made a tremendous amount of difference.
I love
People hear
that.
me.
Yeah.
They take heed to what I'm telling them. They take the steps and the initiative to fix what I'm trying to tell them to fix. They let me do my job, and that's the beauty of it. That's the reason I
Which
done
is
it.
important. And what I you're amazing, by the way. I just want to say that out loud. You are
Thank
amazing.
you.
And I feel like there's been so many different times in your life where you've made certain shifts, right? You've been able to decipher, well, this isn't quite working for me right now, or maybe this could be a better fit. And you made that shift. But to make the shift into entrepreneurship is a whole different level because sometimes you just don't know what you don't know. Sometimes you are literally building the plane as you are flying down on your
Yes.
own. And there's a difference between delivering the technical skill and building a business that functions. Talk to me
Yes.
about that. Like, how has it been building from the ground up and building something that has lasted for all these years?
I'll tell you, it's definitely been a struggle.
Mm,
It's not for the weak.
that's
I'm not
it.
saying that people can't do it, which again is another reason I started Fierce and Fearless because I want to help you do it. I want you to understand it is doable.
Yeah,
Um, but I literally started this on my couch one night because I was so fed up.
right,
And I already knew what I wanted. I knew what the vision was. Um, I just needed the business plan part put in place. And
right.
so I got in connection with my local small business unit,
Nice.
and they were able to finally help me get that proper business plan, the LLC, all that set up. Well, my uncle actually helped me with the LLC. Um, we spent hours trying to get that fixed. And so once I had that going, I mean, I just started talking to people, letting people know what I do, how I work, and probably literally within a week or two, I was getting people like calling nonstop. Hey, can
Nice.
you help me with this? Can you do this? Um, and so I will also tell you, I messed up because I never truly marketed that business. Because word of mouth was going so
So
fast
well, yeah,
and never left space for me to actually market the business. Plus, I started the business from my pocket. Like I've never
mm,
had funding. I've never
right.
had, it's all been out of my pocket. And so still needed probably market the business, do a little bit of that. But yeah, I did never done that. But
Mm,
that ought to tell people that that's how far your personality and your character can carry. When you do right by one person
that's it.
and you do the job right and you show up and you show these people what you're about and exactly what you can do, that's all it takes. It
Yeah,
can take you a million miles before you realize it.
yeah, yeah.
And
And
I have met so many amazing people
yeah,
just doing this job.
I think,
And even
sorry.
to this day, like there's clients that I may not have anymore, but they still reach out to me because that trust is what was built in between that relationship.
Isn't I know it sounds crazy to even ask this question, but like I know many people, not just women, struggle with building relationships and don't understand that at the core of business,
Mhm.
relationships is what drives a lot of business forward, especially when you're first starting out. So you could do the sales and marketing, you could do all the, social media techniques and all that. But some
Mhm.
of your best sales champions are your past clients, are your current clients, are the ones who are deeply partnered with you in different projects. So my question would be like, how do you sustain, not just build relationships, but sustain them in a way that allows them to be your biggest cheerleaders?
Listen. You listen to your
Mm,
client. I think that's where so many people mess up is
yeah.
they don't listen to the client. They just automatically, kind of like we were talking about with the help situation, they just
Yeah.
automatically tell themselves, oh, they need this, or oh, I'm going to help them do this.
Mm-hmm.
They don't listen to the full need and the full concern of the client.
Of the client. Mm,
And when we do that, we've automatically written off that part of the relationship. We've automatically let that client know I'm not interested in what you're trying to tell me or what the actual concern is. I'm only interested in fixing your problem.
mm,
And when we realize that the problem is so much bigger than that,
yeah.
there's a more deeper need than what we are offering as what we normally offer.
Yeah.
We go a lot further. And a lot of my clients will tell you that. That's why we have this personal connection because when they first came to me, I listened
Right.
and I took in exactly word for word what they were telling me. So
Yeah.
I didn't just dive in and fix a problem that I've been fixing for 15 years. I showed up in a different way for them and I also fixed the problem. And I made
Mm,
sure that they understood step by step how and what I was doing for them so they could understand.
mm,
And, a lot of times, especially in the field that I'm currently working in, these providers they want you to let them know what you're doing. They need
right.
that education. They don't want you to just do it.
Do it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they're not understanding.
Yeah.
They want you to speak to them. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to be involved.
Yeah.
And when we learn that and understand that it helps our clients to know what we're doing literally step by step through the project, it will carry a longer way than if you're just doing the project.
Yeah. Just trying to do the task for the payment, just
Yes.
trying to get through without really understanding or curating the solution that works. Um,
Yes.
maybe that's how we fail or don't sustain business, because you see a lot of businesses start and stop, start and
Mhm.
fail, never, you never cycle back to even having another business. What is the one thing you will tell a woman listening right now that should be like some of the first, maybe two key steps that they should take if they have an idea and really want to propel that forward?
Really know your niche, really know exactly what you want to do, what the topic is or the subject, and who the audience is.
Right.
Um, and number two, listen to your gut.
Mm,
Do not jump instantly. Take it slow. Make sure you're listening to your inner self before you take that next step.
mm,
But those are the two first key things I would most definitely tell somebody before starting a business is most definitely truly 110% know
who you
what
are.
it is you're
Yeah.
wanting to do
Mm,
and where you're wanting it to go.
mm. I think what you said there about your gut, I think as
Mhm.
women we have a beautiful sense of intuition. We just don't tap into it a lot of the time. There's a lot that is said to us. We feel sometimes in life, not just business, but in life, in your profession, in your career, personally, otherwise, you kind of know. You know when the no's are no's and the yeses are yeses, right?
Yes.
You you
Yes.
you is more than just logic at times. You can have the logical decision making, but there's a lot of times where you kind of feel and you understand exactly what your next step should be. And I always say, if I'm playing tennis with myself in my head, like I'm going back and forth, yes, I should do this. No, I shouldn't do that. It's probably a no. It's probably
Mhm.
saying, if we got to do all that, we probably got to say no,
Yeah.
and understanding yourself enough. But I don't think many people understand themselves enough, or understand themselves to the point where they could be clear about what works and what doesn't. I
Yes.
want to talk a little bit about you have a daughter,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
saw that. I was like, oh my gosh, girl, mom. So talk to me because I've seen, you say you want to build a legacy, and when you think of legacy, you think of her. Talk to me a little bit about what you would want when she looks at you, when she sees you being this dynamic woman, making these dynamic decisions and going after what she wants and what you want in life. What do you feel like she sees in the day to day?
I definitely feel like she sees a go-getter,
Hmm.
um, a hardworking individual,
Yeah.
and someone who stops at nothing. Um,
Mm.
and I've been that way my whole life, but when she came into this world, it was like more powerful.
Yeah.
I knew that I had to step it up at least about 20 notches compared to what I
Mm.
was doing before. I
Mm.
had to definitely show up 10 times more than I was showing up before.
Right.
Um, because you realize you're showing up for another human being,
Yeah.
not just yourself. And, I think a lot of us as mothers can say this. It's one thing when they're in the womb because
Mm.
we know we can protect them. We
Yeah.
know what's going in, and you know what I'm saying? When
Yeah.
they come out, it's a whole
That's
nother
it.
world,
Yeah.
whole nother world. And it's scary because we don't know what is happening when they're not in our vicinity, you know?
That's right.
And mine's getting ready to be 18 in the next month. And
Wow.
it has been very challenging for me. It has.
Wow.
I mean, she's such a beautiful young lady. I know that I've raised her as well as I possibly could, my mom, my grandma. Um, but it doesn't stop me from having that motherly fear,
Yeah.
those thoughts, especially, her going out here or traveling certain places on her own. But with that being said, I feel like if I continue to show up like I have been showing up for her when she was a child, she will know exactly what direction and steps she needs to take in life. And she knows that if at any time she gets stuck, all she has to do is call or come home or whatever she needs to do.
Yeah.
Um, and the number one thing I have taught her from the time she was little, and I have told her this is how you will truly succeed in life. One, listen.
Yeah.
Two, make sure you understand that when you're given an instruction, follow the instruction.
Sure. Mm.
It's not always great to go against what you're being told.
Yeah.
Um, and I've told her, read. If you can
Mm.
read, you can go anywhere in life.
That's it.
Because I think that is one of the biggest problems with some of these newer generation kids. They don't want to do the work. They don't want to
Mm.
read. They want to skip, and they don't understand how important what they're missing when they're doing that.
Yeah.
So I always told her, if you read and you can read anything, you will go far
Yeah.
because that is going to tell you exactly what is going on with whatever you're doing.
Mm.
Um, and then the main thing I told her is if you ever get in a situation to where you're unsure, write down your pros and cons, weigh
Right.
your pros and cons.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, if you're having to constantly go back too many times saying yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, more than likely it's a no, because that's telling you your body is uncomfortable with
That's
what is
right.
going on.
That's
Your
right.
body's not aligned with it.
Yeah.
Um, and so, like I said, I feel very confident in the woman that I raised. Um, again, doesn't mean that there's still not society out there.
That's right.
but I have always taught her to be herself. Do not go by everything you see or everything everyone's doing or what everybody looks like. Show
Mm,
up for yourself.
that's it. And that's so powerful because I think there is, just as you had wise, strong leadership in women growing up, I think she's had the same,
Yes.
hearing how you speak and the intentionality with what you share with her because you got to understand there's realities out here, right? And
Mhm.
generations now are growing up in a different time. They're
Yes.
exposed to way more than many before. So it's important for them to know how to weed out, how to read between the lines,
Yes.
how to not absorb everything that's thrown at you. And so I think it's important to talk, but keep talking and keep showing up for her,
Yes.
as we all need to as mothers. My mine is only but 5, so I have a ways to go yet. But I know for me, I try to make sure that she understands, even with all the other influences,
Hmm.
let there be only but a few minor voices that you focus in on because those are the voices
Yes.
that love you and want to see you do well, and you can trust they want to see you do well. So
Yes.
I want us to, as we start to kind of wind down and wrap up a little bit, I'd like to hear a little bit about going backward to your girlhood, you know
Uh-huh.
and what are some things that maybe the younger version of yourself, just as maybe when you were your daughter's age, what would the younger version of yourself be proud of about the version of yourself that exists today?
The strength,
Mm,
most definitely the strength. Standing out, showing up. Because like I said, when I was younger, I never wanted this. I mean, I still don't like the spotlight, but I was definitely that kid that like I am literally in the corner praying. No one
mm,
calls on my name. No one comes over to me. Like I'm just literally left alone, you know?
yeah,
Um, and I think that the woman that I've become today, um, my younger self would definitely be proud because although I still carry some of that shyness and some of that like, oh, don't call on me, I have learned what I'm comfortable with, and I've learned when I feel safe enough or okay enough to stand up and stand out. I've learned that it's okay to stand up and stand out at certain times in certain situations. And
mm,
I'm using my voice more, because like I said, I didn't even want to speak in class. I didn't want to even share the answer, even if I knew it. Now I'm realizing how important that is to speak
yeah,
because, you know, they don't want us to have a voice.
mm,
And unfortunately, people of our kind, at one point, we had no voice.
that's it. That's
So,
it.
yeah, yeah, I'm realizing the importance of standing up now and speaking out and sharing exactly what is on my mind,
Yeah.
feel within an appropriate sense. Um, and I definitely think my younger self would be proud of that for sure.
That's it's funny, Sarah. I feel like we are but a twin at the moment because I am a complete introvert, as wild as that might sound. And if you see me in a room, oh, chances are I'm probably in a corner just chilling with myself because I really love myself and I love hanging out with myself. But at the same time, I was even talking to my husband about this the other day.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's so many voices online. There's so many voices in society. Not all of them are honest. Not all of them are transparent. Not all of them are sharing positivity. And I think it's super important that when we know better, we do better,
Oh yeah,
and regardless of our personalities and what we like, sometimes we kind of just gotta step out of our comfort zone and show up
yes,
because I'm telling you, fierce and fearless, the lead her shift. Women need us. They need us because there are many women who are like us, many who are complete opposite to us, but they are looking for something that helps them to kind of branch out and have their voice be heard. And we are those channels to do that. So let's, in 2025 and beyond, I'm counting on you. And I'm gonna do it myself. We are gonna be accountable to each other that we show up regardless, because the world needs to hear our message.
I
I
absolutely
want to
agree.
thank you so much, Ciara. I think you're super amazing. I think you're an amazing mom. I
You.
think you're an amazing businesswoman. I think you have a lot to offer through your magazine and other ways. I also feel like maybe we should do this again at some point. I don't know when, but we should catch back up. I want to hear, after a year of your magazine being launched, what happened? What new is happening in the world of your magazine? So if you do, give me the honor. Maybe we'll circle back at some point again and do a part two. But I
That
want to
sounds
just
good.
thank you. Thank you for being open and honest and transparent, sharing your experiences and, some of these stories. I really love hearing about Granny, your
Yes.
grandmother and aunties and all the other stuff. So yes, thank you so much for being on the leadership today. Now, if this episode spoke to you, share it. Don't keep it a secret. Don't gatekeep. Send it to that woman who you know needs to hear. You are not alone. And your leadership still matters. I'll repeat that. You are not alone. And your leadership matters. And wherever you listen, please subscribe to the LeadHer podcast, or head on over to our website, theleadhershift.com, to connect with us there. This movement is about more than just leadership. It's about building something better. I'd love to hear your story, because your voice matters, because the world is ready for your authority. The question is, are you?